Friends, how's it going? This is a hotel room in Hartford, Connecticut. It's been a couple weeks since I have done any podcasting or any YouTube stuff. Probably done 21-minute breakdowns in that time and done some commentary. I commentated Fight Pass fights, TKO from Montreal. But it's been a while since we've done any thinking and chatting on YouTube. So Mark, what's up, Mark? Mark is going to, hey, thanks. A couple of comments, kindness. Mark is going to put this on podcast form as well. So I got my earpods in. So there's a couple of things I want to think about. I'm commentating this weekend at CES 56. It's in Hartford, Connecticut, live on UFC Fight Pass. I will be commentating with Tom Lawler. And a host. His name escapes me for a moment. Please forgive me, but I'm super stoked for that. So please join in. There was something I wanted to share for a while. Something, I don't know how good my lighting is here. My apologies, but hey, something I wanted to share for a while. Something John Fitch told me. Little concepts he shared with me when we were in San Jose or wherever we were, Chicago. I don't remember. He was fighting. Rory McDonald, and we were talking about his approach. And he's been training with Daniel Cormier, Cain Velasquez, and all these great wrestlers for a long time. And he said once they started training with Khabib, so this is the basics of it, and then I want to kind of expand on it. And I also have some thoughts on the experience of fighting itself. So these are the things I want to tell you about today. So what John Fitch told me about Khabib. Also, I'm writing a book called, right now the working title is called 90% Mental, with a professor of psychology from the University of British Columbia. He is a martial artist as well, Dr. David Klonsky. And we've been working on that. That's one of the things I'm doing in Hartford. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we've flushed out about some of the psychology of fighting. So those are two topics. May only have 20 minutes here, but let's get into it. My apologies for taking 2 minutes to set it up. 2 minutes is a long time today. So Khabib comes in and starts working with John Fitch and these guys. And Fitch said that from that moment on, when they started training with him, they changed their sort of approach to how they approach wrestling for fighting, or the act of grappling, wrestling, physical control for the purpose of fighting. And before Khabib, he said they, and most people who grappled to fight, would use a position, take it, let's say we're in half guard, use that position, what up, okay, a couple of hellos. I'm talking about John Fitch told me what something Khabib told him. You would get that position back in the day. Fitch, his team, and most people approached it this way, and you would hold that position. Position before submission. There was a lot of different philosophical ways to put it, but you would take that position, you would hold it, maintain it, and then free something to hurt somebody. Punch them. If I can control you from here, get a hand free, I hit you. If I can advance the position, we will hold you. Hello, Sean. Hold that position further, and I will abuse you. That is how people approached wrestling for the purpose of fighting. I have Randy Couture's book. It's called Wrestling for Fighting, and that's what he talks about, because that was the mindset. Khabib comes along and very much changed that philosophy. The philosophy he introduced to them is not new. You roll with a black belt. I rolled with one today at Ronin BJJ in New Haven, Connecticut. The instructor was very, very talented, black belt. And what he did to me was he would pressure me. This is Khabib's approach. Pressure me. I hate it. I'm uncomfortable. Then he would offer you a doorway to something slight that will, in the short term, be slightly more comfortable. And I will take it. The only thing is, it's temporarily a relief from the pressure, but it's a worse position. So that idea of, thank you, Aaron, that idea of philosophically approaching, and this carries to life. This is not just a fighting thing. This is a philosophy that easily carries to life. So we will discuss it again in a very general way. This is Khabib, this is me, or whoever. He will apply so much pressure in whatever position I am in. I would do anything to relieve that pressure in the short term. So what I will do, he will then offer a doorway. I will take it. That doorway will give me temporarily release from that pressure, but it's a doorway to a worse position. Simple philosophy, He didn't invent it. This is a part of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a long time, but now it became what we do. That's what John Fitch does. It's what Daniel Cormier does. It became the foundational approach. Again, before it was get a position, keep it, try to maintain it, and then hit. And if ever a better position happens, we'll take it. This one became pressure, hurt, do whatever, make it uncomfortable by pressuring your face, hit you, position something, make it so bad you would do anything to relieve the pressure, including move to a worse position. Beautiful stuff. So, what's the philosophical lesson from this? Is you would have been better off not to take the short-term relief, right? You would have been better off to handle the pressure, stay there, and not take the short-term relief offer. This is life. This is not just a fighting thing. This is a life thing. In a lot of situations, the long play, staying with it for a long time, will give you the better result. Whereas taking that job that kind of is there or sort of doing something that feels easier today will, in the long run, hurt you. Right? Philosophically speaking, this is the approach that Khabib takes, and many and most now. Again, I'm not saying Khabib invented it. He is a genius. I'm a passionate admirer of his work, but this concept has existed for a long time. But it's just so crystallized and so galvanized in the way that he approaches it. But again, in the short term, the pressure is so hard that I would do anything to relieve that pressure temporarily, and I'll move to a worse position to gain temporary relief. He will then pressure me, hurt me, do more to you in that position, and you will again move to, in search of temporary relief, actually make your situation worse. And what I found so beautiful about it is this is so often true in life, right? The thing that is a little easier in the short term relieve some of that pressure, some of that anxiety, some of that fear in the short term, in the long term often gets you further from your goals. You know, sticking with the hard thing is often going to give you a better result in the long run than taking the temporary relief in the short run. We could use a million examples of it. You know, um, I mean, when people create things now, creating it yourself is harder than taking a low paying job and doing it for someone else. But in the long run, if you do it, you will get a better result. That's one general example. But philosophically speaking, the short term relief that gives you a worse situation than you were in is feels easier, but gets worse. So that was the beauty of it that I really, really enjoyed and John Fitch, first of all, is a very, very cool guy and very smart. You think of him tenacious, a grinder, he's a lot to deal with if he's on top of you, whatever, right? Right. We can say whatever we want. But the truth is he's super smart and really philosophically smart in the way that and most of these guys are. I've started to become re-obsessed with some of these guys who've been around a long time because there's so much knowledge to be gained. Not knowledge of how to block a punch or not knowledge of how to check a kick or not knowledge of how to defend the takedown or whatever, but knowledge of how to live, knowledge of how to problem solve, how to fix issues. I'll take a few questions. Sure, why not? Mr. Black, I wanted to get your thoughts on KC fighting style, the one with a lot of elbows. I'm not sure. Also, will headbutts ever be legal in MMA? So hold off any questions for a moment, please. Quick thing, I'm working on going to Myanmar to commentate Letway. If you don't know what Letway is, some of you do. You're fight obsessives. That's why you're watching Robert Black live in a hotel room in Hartford talk about fucking fighting, you crazy fucks. Letway is Muay Thai with headbutts. Bare-fisted Muay Thai with headbutts. It actually predates Muay Thai. It's like a mother's Muay Thai kind of thing. And I'm working on going to Myanmar to commentate that. So headbutts, will it ever be in fighting? It was in early fighting. Mark Coleman is a friend. I chat with him a lot on the thing, and he seems to really like my work because that was very complimentary. If headbutts were there, Mark Coleman would have been the champion of the world forever. Get into the guard, control the biceps, and fucking smashes the top hard part of the head. And here it's really rough, right? So they had to remove that. It was just too rough. It's made over time. What happens? So let's say we put headbutts back in, or we can kick the head of the down opponent. We put in anything we want. At first, it's really violent, and really scary, and really uncomfortable. But over time, you start to develop the skills and the tactics to deal with it. So one of them, for example, is in the guard, any type of clinch or guard or an underhook position in Muay Thai, you would normally control the head. Now, whatever it does has to include this padding of your head. I have to put this. It would be fine, but I'll control the padding of your head. So as you strike me, there'll be something between your bare skull and me. Crazy shit, right? But martial arts, this is what it is. It's the purity of left way that is so interesting. But so I just wanted to share that little philosophical tip. Doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about it really, and you think about that philosophy, not just Habib fighting, but life. A lot of the time, staying in the fire will give you a better long-term result than taking the easy way out in the short term, which will in the long term hurt you. Right. So maybe give that a thought if you're so inclined. The other thing I wanted to share about is, so I'm working on this book with Dr. David Klonsky. He's a doctor of psychology, a professor at the University of British Columbia. He's here in New Haven. Part of the reason this was an exciting gig, besides just getting to call fights, which I love, and fights on Fight Pass with a great promotion. It's been around for a long time with a good reputation. I'm down. 100% of the time, I'm down. But I also got to, while I was doing it, be able to, hey, Brandon, what up? To be able to spend a bit of time with Dave and work on our book. So there's a lot of things about the book. It's a lot of work, and it's to be able to look at the view of the psychology of fighting. You're looking at a lot of different things. How people train. There he is. It's like, are we Skyping at 11 a.m. tomorrow? Yes. Yes, we are. You look at how people train. That's psychological, right? You look at how you improve yourself. That's a psychological element. You look at strategy. You look at how you overcome threats. You look at confidence. What is confidence? Confidence. We were discussing it today. The balance between confidence and humility is massive importance for a fighter. But again, most of these things you can see, if you see the way broadly, you see it in all things. That's, Musashi said that. The Book of Five Rings, definitely read it. And you see this in life now, this idea, the balance of confidence and philosophy. You have to have the confidence to try something. You have to have the confidence to step into a cage, or the confidence to be able to examine something. You're going to do 30 push-ups. You only get to 27 before struggling. You try to do 40. Yeah, there's a million psychological things of what you believe you can do, etc. I know the point you're making. You have to have the confidence to do something, the confidence to try something, the confidence to throw a spinning kick, the confidence to step in a cage at all, the confidence to train, all of that. You must have it. And confidence is achieved through hard work. So the more you work, the more confidence is a byproduct of work. People are like, let's become more confident, or, we got to work on our confidence. Confidence is a reward for work and preparation. It's cool, right? The more you work, the more confident you can become, which can allow you to work. So it's kind of rather than a snowball going down a hill, it's one that gets easier as it goes up the hill, and it raises. But you must have enough humility. You're never going to get better if you think you're awesome, right? You're never going to get better. Over time, I always get a little prickly when I see anybody, never mind somebody who didn't fight or whatever, but anybody, even like great journalists that are really good people that are my friends. I'll see a tweet and they're like, if Kevin Lee's going to do this, he better work on. It's like, you don't know that anything. You can't speak with confidence on that. That's wrong. Humility would say, I don't quite understand how and why Kevin Lee is having this particular experience, but I find it fascinating. And if I spend a lot of time, I will learn about it, right? The balance between confidence and humility. I literally spend a lot of time thinking about all the shit that I don't know and may never know about fighting. Part of the reason I continue to try to learn and continue to improve my understanding is I'm certain that whatever I know, and we can do this with all things. Whatever I know, let's say that this book. I really like this book, by the way. It's just a daytimer, but I love it. They have an Instagram site or a website or whatever you can find it. It's really good. So let's say this book is all the knowledge that might exist in any topic: fighting, computers, piano, whatever. If you believe you know this much of it, there's fuck all to get. But if you believe that you only know this much of it, look at all you can learn. You start to look at it as this never-ending ability to gain more knowledge by understanding that you know very little about what is possible to know about a subject. Because it's true. In 100 years, we'll understand how the cup is half full. Cup has only got drops in it. Now, if I take those drops, I'm like, look at all the water. But if I put it in the context of what could be known, I know very little. And you need that humility, you need to work on that humility to be able to look when you're a black belt and go, there's so much more I don't understand. Because even if you could get to be the person in the world who knew the most about anything, that's irrelevant because the knowledge is still all there. Once upon a time, people thought astrology was real. What we understand about astronomy may be only as little as that was and is barely correct. I do spend a great deal of time trying to disprove things I think I believe and things that we believe, you know. Um, a lot of the flaws of anything is the doctrines of belief, you know. Always put your foot on the outside when you're in Southpaw versus Orthodox. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. And if you think that's real, I know what you're going to do now. You know exactly where you're going to put your foot. That's great. I can use that knowledge, right? So all of these things. But anyway, it has been a really exciting couple of days of work and working on these subjects. And the deeper you get into it, the more you get exposed to the fact that we have very little true understanding. And one of them, Richard Finley, though humility, we can peer into the abyss of the human condition and push the golf ball into the orthodox hole. Yeah, I like where you're going. Um, for example, by this is another aspect of confidence versus humility. If you have the humility to think you probably don't really know, you will see the things that are missing. You will be able to see the things that are missing. For example, when we see fighting and we say he did this and this was this and he did that because of that and that was a mistake. What we have, and this would be true of watching almost anything. What we have to realize is we might only have 1 or 2% of all the available information. You know, there's feints, there's moments, there's breathing, there's ideas, there's psychology, there's all of these unseen things that are we have access to. He did this thing there. We don't know why. We don't know what he felt. We don't know what he saw. We don't know what he had seen before that. We don't know the tricks that were put into place. We have very little information. Once you get there, once you get to the point of seeing that that's true and knowing that that's true, you are forced to have humility. You can't possibly look at something and realize we have almost no information and then go, well, Kevin Lee really needs to work on X, Y, and Z. We don't even know what's happening. And so I've had the odd, and I don't get into very few, 1 in 1,000. Would I even ever get irate at any type of conversation in the Twitter or whatever? That's years in my past and that's mostly because I have no control over what somebody else might say, but I do have control over how that I can react to it. And that's something you practice and you work on. But there's little moments where I've had this, where I would see somebody say, yeah, Wilder's not that great. Brazil, he fucked up. That guy's not very good. It's like, it's very strange to respond that way. But you have almost no information whatsoever about what happened between Wilder and Brazil. I don't know whether some people call him Brazil. Or any other scenario like that. We see a guy jump off a wall and punch a guy in the face, and we're like, he did that. He didn't distance management. There was too much volume of punches. All that shit is tiny way CES 56. Yes, sir. Friday night. All of that stuff is total bullshit. It's narrative created for television. That's what that is. Distance, range management, um, striker versus grappler. These are ways that we take bits of things and try to say them and sell them in a way that's exciting to a viewer. It's not real, right? But we believe it's real. So somebody who's never trained has no idea what you see, what you feel, what the experience is like. Will watch Wilder and say, "Oh, that's stupid. Anybody else could have stopped it." When they actually have no information, they have like 7 pieces of barely true information that they've copied in their mind from something Joe said or somebody else said that were said only in that way because of the construct of television itself, the construct of a broadcast surrounding a fight, which was imitated from how people commentated baseball and then football and whatever. And so you go and we hear those things that are said for entertainment purposes and to make some amount of explanation of something highly complex that we can feel like we understand, and then we think it's true. And then we think we actually know, when in fact we don't know. And We barely have any information. Where somebody puts their shoulder when you're fighting them affects how you act. But we can't see that. And if we do see it, we don't know if we'll think it means something, but it was disregarded by the other guy. What you experience in the fight itself is, and that's, I'm sorry, it always takes me a long time to get to some of these places because this is where I work these ideas out. Now we'll write in a book some of these ideas I got to work out with you guys. Thank you very much, by the way, for this. So the biggest thing we're missing is the experience of what's actually happening, right? We cannot see it. And I've tried very hard to make sure that I'm not a dick, right? I don't want to be a dick, right? I want to be excitedly share what I see and love. Um, so I try not to be rude or judgmental or a dick about it. But when I see people that actually have not fought and they talk about what they are seeing, it's almost irrelevant. Now, if they're very good talkers and they're entertaining and they say it in a way that our ears like connect to it, it's like we've heard Joe say that or other experts say that, and it sounds right. And then distance management, using of feints and level changes, and we think we're connecting the dots. But what's actually the biggest among the immense things that are happening that we don't see and therefore don't know, and therefore what we're seeing is such a small amount of what's actually happening, is that the experience itself for the two artists that are fighting, they are in an altered state of consciousness. So what we are seeing is not only not what they are seeing, but how we are experiencing it is one of a viewer, not one of of the experience. And if you've never had the experience, what you cannot realize is that there's almost no, at the bottom levels and even the upper mid levels, there's almost no thought in the way that we describe thoughts. So when we say, oh, and he saw this and now he did that, what's actually, I call it, and it's imperfect and it's still not developed and it will work its way into our book, but I call it algorithmic thinking. And it sort of pulls together from kind of a thesis statement, which is the brain will act the way it's been programmed to act if the artist is in an optimum state of focus and arousal, right? So now, if we work backwards, focus and arousal, people are like, oh, and arousal gets all horny. It's like arousal just means psychological arousal. It's just we've used it in a very particular way that makes us misunderstand what that is. So it's said flow state, and being in a state of flow is a part of this, but it is not the same as being in a flow state for a free climber or being in because what you are doing is connecting. There are more similarities in what's happening in the brain. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name for a moment. It's another psychology PhD that I've worked with who studied the brains of jazz players as they were improvising together. And that activity is somewhat happening since, and the two of us are relating and communicating and pushing and pulling in fighting. So it isn't just a flow state the way that when somebody flips their motorcycle, flips their motorcycle upside down, there is another player, much like when a jazz combo works together. That's fucking fascinating, right? But with that happening now, the altered state the brain is in, it's seeing things we could not see. It's also identifying patterns, and we are using that against each other. The better you are at identifying patterns, I can give you a pattern and then change it. If you're not very good at it, it's kind of irrelevant. So we are starting to use the mental skills and how our brains are working to manipulate each other. And we're not thinking. We don't go, this is like, can you imagine if it's like, if you had to think, okay, he's feinting with his left hand, he's level changing, okay, he's moving over there, okay, now I'll track it. Like, you're not doing that. I talked to Brad Katona, like a young, very smart. A lot of the modern guys understand this. If you ask them about their decision making in fights, and they'll be like, "Well, in the fight, it's almost automated." That's why I call it algorithmic thinking. The brain will respond the way you've programmed it to respond. If the artist is in a optimum state of focus and arousal, so program it. Number two. So we programmed it. What we've done in the months leading up will be reflected in our actions now if we access the proper physiological and psychological state. That's the gist of it. Is what happens now is somewhat the best now leave that decision making and access this automated dis, choices based on the programming that they put in them. But then the next level above that is they're able to then put that back. So the very best, does the optimal state occur when a fighter is most relaxed? That's a great fucking question. There is a combination of relaxation and stimulation that happens, and they feel more relaxed when they are in this state. So I love the question. I'm not sure that getting relaxed accesses the state, but being in the state feels freeing. It's pleasant, even though you're getting kicked in the head. It's oddly pleasant while you're in it. And I've only accessed it a few times in a couple of fights. In a fight I lost, and then in a couple of fights that I won. But it is something wonderful. The experience of time changes dramatically when that thing happens and you go back in between rounds. You don't have really the time to think about it, but the feel is there. That was that 1 minute or 30 minutes. Somebody Jones said, I would say it's a creative state. So one of the things that happens in that state is you are free to innovate, access. Can you explain why supreme confidence is important? Yeah, we discussed it a little bit. Confidence is a result of work. So supreme confidence comes to as a result of hard work, preparation, mental preparation, and physical preparation. Confidence is earned. So all the top best ones have it because they're the best ones. And because they have it, they become even better. So it's an upwards snowball that allows itself to go upwards. It's beautiful, really. This is life too. The better you're doing, the more confidence that you get in what you're doing, you do it better, right? They work together. Things are really hard at the beginning. If you're the best fighter in your own gym, you're in the wrong gym. That's a really good point. Although sometimes you don't have the option, you have what you have. But yes, so this state, again, it's really cool. You guys have really cool questions about it. But no matter how much we read or discuss it, we we can never. It will make it hard for us to explain what we're really saying. And my goal, always, until I die, because of my love for this, and I learn things about life, and it enriches my life. Um, my goal is to find the real truth, not the TV truth or not the things that we say. And once we've outlined what those things are, there becomes sort of it's not really true, blah, blah, blah. He's trying to get the takedown. He defended it. And now this is happening. Those are such broad strokes. There's complex little battles and little psychological battles, little physical battles, all happening within that. And a lot of the time when we push somebody to the cage and we say, oh, okay, he's working for the takedown, you're not working for the takedown. It's just vertical jiu-jitsu. It's just a vertical playing surface where you're fighting with a wall. You don't want to take down. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Sometimes when I'm fighting you, I pretend I'm going to take you down, and I don't. And if you don't respond, maybe I'll really take you down. Same on the fence, right? But there's millions of these, so I don't want to get the outline that has been created and then talk about it in the way that seems right for that. Foot on the outside, then do this, use a lot of feints, grappler versus strike, whatever. Because there's no value in that. There's no love in that. There's no journey in that. The journey is to constantly seek the real truth. And the truth is super fucking hard. When you realize that there is an altered psychological state and a dynamic between two human beings that is going on, it becomes really hard to not only analyze and understand, but it becomes really hard to try to figure out the verbiage to talk about it. And David and I have been working on that with this book. We're trying to slowly get to the verbiage of what's happening. For another example, we're talking about game planning. And as we're explaining, well, game planning goes wrong, or you deviate from the game plan, or the game plan goes out the window. Well, I can have the perfect game plan and execute it perfectly and very much lose a fight. Very much. No game. The biggest thing is my game plan or your game plan, the game plan, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in a world. Let's take a simple one. I'm Eddie Alvarez. I want to kick at distance or wrestle inside. And then we're looking at it, we're like, wow, the game plan went out the window. Well, we need to examine. There's two people in there. There's many game plans, but two, and in all their sub strategies. There's another guy, and his game plan is to not let me do that. Stop me from doing that. So did I just fail or did he succeed? And in many cases, it's a function of both. When Connor does this to a guy, it doesn't work. It's different. It was newer then. It was newer. Or Anderson Silva does his games or whatever. That's a thing. It affects my choices. It affects my thinking. It can throw me off my state of optimal. If I start thinking about what's happening instead of allowing that algorithmic thinking to take the automated responses that I've programmed it to give me in that spot, all of a sudden I'm in there going, holy fuck, it's Anderson Silva. This is freaky. Oh my God, what's he doing? I'm fucked, right? I'm fucked. So those are things. But those things, if I fail, you'd be like, yeah, I threw it out the window. I fucked up the game plan. Well, he did something that caused that. We're never alone in there. There is a dynamic. And when you watch fights and you're really trying to get to these points where we're looking for new ways to understand it, and it'll take years and it'll be only small bits, is when we watch fights over time, if you just gently blur your vision, very gently, like not blur it, just gently, like take a slightly wider look of what you're seeing, you start to watch the dynamic between the two. And that's where everything changed for me. That's where these 700 1-minute breakdowns started to take hold. It isn't this guy did this, and then he did that, and then he did this, and then he did that. There is a shared dynamic that is happening in these fights. And once you look at it that way, it changes the meaning of what you see. It changes the experience and it changes the understanding. This is life. These fights, studying film is like learning cheat codes. Why wouldn't? So, yes, but here, another thing we worked on today. I'm going to study all your fights. You know what I'm studying? Who you were. I'm not studying who you are. I'm studying who you were on 4 nights over the last 5 years. There's some information there. But if I obsess over that information, I think I'm fighting that guy and you're somebody different. There's also a really, really neat layering that happens. So there was a fight I commentated TKO 48. I believe it was 48. It was wonderful. And there were 2 guys fighting, Jesse Arnett and Josh Hill. And great fighters. They've been trying to put this together for a long time. And Jesse has a really deep penetrating left hand, and he backs it, adds a lot of pressure. And he kept pushing Josh against the fence and trying to unload on him. And Josh was kind of offering and trying to draw it. He was a little jumpy, especially at first, but the idea was to draw it and then rip you. If Jesse or anybody else looked at it and goes, what would be something that a smart fighter would exploit about the performances they've seen of me? You could extrapolate things that they may do. And then you plan ways to make that wrong. So, for example, Jesse is hitting, Josh is sitting against the fence and going to slip and counter. If Jesse's game starts to be a little more in and out based, where he pops in, draws the counter, pops out and hits, which is what the 2 guys who won the bantamweight and the heavyweight belts both did, that in and out. Not just hit you and move, but hit you, move, draw yours, hit you, move, draw yours. It's the root of the game. But that's Coach Fernand Lopez, and he gamifies that skill. Not the punches or the kicks, but the skill of playing and drawing and making you believe you're going to hit me. It is fascinating. But so what did we learn? Did I share anything of any value? I appreciate you guys, and it's cool that a bunch of people want to hang out and listen to these thought experiments. I do this is a part that comes with humility. That is an aspect of humility that we were talking about. The idea that consistently looking back and going, this will not be true in 5 years if people study it. And it could be fighting, could be anything in the world. Thanks, Richard. Your insights are valuable. Oh, thanks, man. That sounds like a fascinating book. Yes, it is. Bookie Wook. It is. It's a fun process. I'm learning a great deal because we get to points and then we have to examine our own understanding of them. And what my goal always is to end up disproving something that we believe already. Because again, in 100 years, we know that the way we understand how our brains work will be much more advanced, and we'll laugh at what we think is happening now. Also, people come along at different times that use things, even just feinting and in and out stuff. A few years ago, and even just manipulating range. That just wasn't a thing. People didn't talk about what range you were at. I throw a punch, I throw a kick. You know, uh, great thoughts really changed my mentality in preparing for a fight. Oh, good, man. I get a lot of really nice compliments from young fighters. It's really humbling. But yeah, I'm in a constant state of looking and going, the things we think are our explanations are just explanations for now. They're the best we can do. Because why? Today, whatever we know, is sometime in the future's old ideas, right? Because anything we know today, we go back 5 years, we know more than that. 5 years, we know more than that. For all time, we continue to build on knowledge. Knowledge begets more knowledge, it begets new questions, it's different framing of things, and we learn. That's what we do. So it's a very strange aspect of humans that we ever think where we are is it. This is literally just a moment on a long river. It's just a little moment. And in this moment, what we know is a very, very small amount of what we could know and what we will one day know and what is available, possible to be known. And that's the fucking beautiful thing. And I call it a white belt mentality. I've heard that I didn't invent that. I've heard that plenty of times. That's how I call it because it feels cool and I like it and I like that idea. I wore a white belt today. I trained jujitsu today. I have stripes on my blue belt and you know, I have grappled for 10 years. I just don't wear a gi. But I wore a gi today and that gave me a white belt. It fucking felt awesome to put that thing on. It felt awesome. I'm telling you, like I didn't think it would be so cool. It was very exciting. It was very inspiring to put that on. And you want to take Back to the Future in the year 3000 and let him watch MMA fights? Yeah, man, can you imagine? That would be so cool. But we go back and watch fights from UFC 6. Our understanding is different, but so is theirs. So the fights look really different because our understanding is the human understanding. It's what's available to be known right now. The goal is to make that more. The only way to do that, and I don't not trying to criticize or tell you who to watch or not watch, but if anybody is talking from a position of authority when they're doing any type of analysis, oh, this guy did this, that's a mistake, or judgment, they're not doing that. They're not realizing that they know only a tiny. If you speak from a position of authority, you're speaking from the fact, hey, well, you should listen. I'm an expert. And of course, somebody with expertise is still it's a real thing. Somebody's opinion on how my engine works, a mechanic's opinion on how my engine works, is more important than mine. It's more nuanced. He understands things I don't understand. A mother's um, uh, opinion or view on childbirth is fucking a lot more important and relevant and valid than mine. And my opinion, or whoever any person's opinion on fighting, is more valid than somebody who watches 9 fights a year because they don't know anything about it. But I have to remember that I don't know anything compared to what we will know one day. And that allows you to keep going, allows you to keep journeying farther. It allows you to keep, disproving things. It allows you to be thrilled to be wrong, thrilled to find out that something you believed is not really true. Oh, I really appreciate you guys letting me throw some thoughts out there. I do hope the idea of how Habib, the basic, simple, and it is simple, philosophical approach of how he approaches uh, making you so uncomfortable that you try to remove the stress of it by getting to a worse spot that feels comfortable. That's life. That's life. There is a lot to be learned about life there. The greatest relationships in the world, if they went through a little challenge, some people bail and then they move away and they lost something wonderful. And that's business relationships, personal relationships, anything. The hardest, like all the things that people wish they could do, be a basketball player or fucking be Beyonce or, whatever, be a pro, whatever. They're all hard. Be a lot easier to not do them. It's really hard? Fucking not going to all the parties and not getting laid and not, you know, not doing all the fun shit that people do in high school or wherever because you're training and practicing and you're in your bedroom playing guitar. For all the best guitar players didn't do any of those things that would relieve the pressure. Do you think the best thing is to study the other fighter but be open-minded to make changes when the fight starts? I think you study the other fighter with the absolute knowledge that he will change. So you don't be overly expectations are bad. They're bad. Because if I know what you expect, I know how you'll react and I will exploit that. So acceptance of what is really important. Again, life, right? Like, I mean, if I deny that something is hard, or like I ignore paying my taxes, or the life, you have to accept what is. If you accept what is, then you can behave in reality. You can make choices based in reality. It's like looking at yesterday's stock info. That's nice. That's a nice analogy. It's a nice analogy. He's changed. He's changed. And then, or people will say, "Oh, you're going to fight a Diaz brother. You got to kick his legs." Yeah, that might be true, but you also better be ready for the fact that something has changed, and he's expecting you to kick his legs. Have you ever thought about MMA coaching, or consider yourself more of an expert MVR? I consider myself a student who's, has developed some skills at storytelling. That's what I am. I'm a permanent student. I don't like coaching. I don't like it. I like training. I like being coached. I like learning. And then I like to pass that info on. But somehow I'm obsessed not with making a fighter better, but with making us all appreciate it. I'm just so sure that the fucking secrets to life are within these fights. I'm sure of it. And I'm correct, because the secrets to life are also in a cup of coffee, and the secrets to life are also in a painting. I mean, it's all there. But I'm sure of it. So what I feel compelled to do is show people the reality of it. And I've used this analogy around my friends at work, especially at TSN. So I don't know if anybody ever watched poker as a sport on TV, but it didn't exist because it would be really boring. I'm holding up cards and I'm moving chips around, and at the end I got this. But then all of a sudden, they put a camera underneath the table so you could see the two cards that the guy was holding. And all of a sudden, the whole fucking thing changed. All of a sudden, we're like, I want to. Can you believe it? He's got a 2 and a 7. He's got 2 queens. Or, oh my God, he's got 2 queens, but he's got a queen and a 5. He thinks he's got it. All of a sudden, we could see what was really happening. What was really happening, without that camera, commentating poker would be like, okay, and he's there and he's thinking, and he's put in 50 chips. Is he gonna put 50? Oh, he raised it. And you just say what's seeing. But as soon as you could see it, what he had, now we could say, oh, he believes this and this has happened. Now we can see it unfold. I want to be that camera in fighting, because and it's, I'll be commentating on Fight Pass CES 56 Friday night. Make sure you check it out. But over time, my goal is to gather more and more information about what's really happening. And I've now commentated almost 500 shows. That's over 5,000 fights. Never mind the 1,000 breakdowns that I've done. Over time, to find some more of the truths, but also in those moments, I have to develop my skills. So I'm comfortable with the confidence and the humility blended to be able to say that as it's happening. And the only way that's going to happen is through thousands and thousands of repetitions of seeing and experiencing these things in reality. Because I could just say, oh my God, it's a big right hand. He's down. He's going to dish out some ground and pound. It's over. Unbelievable. Because that's easy, right? That's the easy way. That's Khabib pressuring you and then offering you the out. It's really fucking hard to keep trying to get better and to try to change something that a lot of people don't want changed. Really hard. Really hard. It'd be a lot easier to just say striker versus grappler. He just defended the takedown. Now they separate a lot of great distance management. Boom, right hand, large volume of punches. Output, it's over. That's easy. That'll relieve the pressure of having to try to get better every day and of having to try to change things. I want to create change. That's a lot harder. A lot more pressure. Take a lot more. Plateaus suck, but are inevitable. So true. The plateau is where you sit there and you're stuck. And the way to get through a plateau is realizing that something is wrong with the overall framing of what you're doing. And so one of my plateaus over, in 2013 or 14, when I was doing breakdowns, is there wasn't enough categories to explain things. So if you go back, and I'm not bragging, although these are the types of things one can feel pride in. If you go back and Google me talking about Conor McGregor, and I start talking about his spin kicks as distance management, I ask you to find anyone doing and it's so normal now, but I ask you to find anyone before that in any commentary. Watch 100 UFCs, it just wasn't talked about. And I'm not saying some other guy did it and I didn't hear it or whatever, that's cool. It just wasn't. We just didn't talk about that. It was always there. but we just didn't talk about it. It's much hard. So I thought there isn't just enough stuff. So we started talking about things like different categories of things and power and speed and angles and all these things. And over time, you get to a point you're like, because what is baseball? How is baseball viewed and enjoyed? There's just thousands of statistics. Because once they went down the statistic line, they get to a point and they're like, fuck, what's the answer? I guess more statistics. And they just kept going. And now people who love baseball, they love fucking stats. But stats is a fundamental root of how people enjoy baseball. But it's not the only thing. There's art going on, there's movement, there's philosophy, there's physiology, there's fear and anxiety and stories, and all these things are happening, but we talk about it this way. And then fighting, football, when you look at football, you're like, and it stops them at the line. Why? Why? How? So the goal starts to become keep asking how and why, and then realize you don't know the answer, and then fucking go try to learn the answer. It's really quite simple, but it is it's hard at the same time. It's a simple idea, but it's not easy. Simple and easy aren't the same thing. It's hard. So then we have to like have more things. Now it's reach and feints and little categories, and that's when people would start saying, "Oh, that combo," or "Oh, that feint," or "Oh, there's a jab," and we just said what we see, and you get to a plateau where it's like, if we just keep saying what we see, we can see more things over time, but we're trapped. So then you have to go back in. What's really happening? What's the experience? What are they experiencing? That's the camera under the thing. It's very difficult. I'll never master it, and will never. Maybe I won't even make breakthroughs. And some people will watch this and say that guy's fucking crazy. But it's my calling. I want to try to figure out what's happening, explain it in a different way, in a deeper way. Hey, thanks. Somebody said about time you're back. So I'm going to sign off with that. I'm sorry that you came late, but please go back and check it out. I had a lot of fun here. I really did. It's been a wild few days of learning and exploring ideas, and I'm glad I got to share some of them with you. And Mark, if you're still here, put this on the podcast too. Guys, you can listen to these in audio at Enjoy the Hostilities. It's what the podcast is called. Rob Black, hope to see you commentating in the UFC. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. And I think over time it's becoming less likely. I think it's becoming less likely. And yet at the same time, my life is getting better. And I'm making more money and doing more travel and exposed to more things. So maybe that's not the way. That would be maybe here's the hallway to relieve some pressure. Because there is pressure to do 10 breakdowns a week and podcast and commentate and prepare and be flying and book my own flights, and email and manage my own career. Like, that's a lot of pressure. Maybe the relief of pressure would be like, yeah, go in and work for these guys. You won't have to do all that. Someone will do it for you. But I think in the long run, I'm actually building something better. So I don't know that that's ever going to happen now, but things change. Their company can change. I can change, all kinds of things, but I'm feeling like I'm on actually the right path right now. But yes, Enjoy the Hostilities. It's in podcast form on most of the podcast platforms. Please follow me on Instagram. Stay independent, more freedom. You're a self-made, and that's awesome. Thank you. MMA Slam Podcast. Hey, I'll do your podcast. Just message me on Instagram or Twitter or something. Tell me to follow you on Twitter, and I'll do your podcast. Thank you. That's very kind. You also can tell the truth. They literally have people tell them what they can and can't say. That's just part of being in a big company. It's not a judgment. I don't. Also, thank you all for watching. If you watch to this end, then that means you like my shit, because that's 50 minutes. And that means I feel okay about asking you guys to go to Fighters Only MMA Awards. I'm nominated with Daniel Cormier, Dominic Cruz, Michael Bisping, and Paul Felder. 4 UFC commentators and Robin Black, an independent dude. And I don't know how that fucking happened, but it's really cool. So please go to Fighters Only MMA Awards and vote for me. And I will be forever in your debt. And follow me on Instagram at Robin Black MMA. I got like 700 1-minute breakdowns there. I do another one every day. And don't forget, Fight Pass CES 456 Friday night, UFC Fight Pass. Love you guys. Really, this was an absolute genuine pleasure. And I won't take as long. You know what? I'll be back tomorrow. Let's do a second one tomorrow. Instead of waiting, because it's been 10 days since I fucking did a YouTube thing. I will be back tomorrow around 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Much love.